Hey guys, I'm Katie Moritz, and in this video I'm going to be comparing my Dusty Strings D650 to my brand new Masterworks DulciForte. I just got the DulciForte a couple months ago, and the question that I've gotten asked the most often is, why did I get a new instrument? What's the difference between the new instrument and my old instrument? So I'm just going to go over all of that in this video now. Also, if you like what I'm doing here on my channel, I would love to have you as a subscriber, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll be posting a lot more content in the coming months. This is a Masterworks DulciForte, which I just got towards the end of July, and this is a late 2011 model of a Dusty Strings D650, so it has all the perks that they added to the D650 in late 2011. I'll start by talking about the range. So the D650 range, it starts in an A1, and it goes all the way up to an E6. So the overall range of the D650 is a little more than 4.5 octaves. The chromatic range, the point at which this instrument becomes completely chromatic, it starts here at B2, and from that point all the way up to E6, it is completely chromatic. When you go lower than the B2, you wind up with a few chromatic notes missing. And for example, I have this note tuned to a C natural instead of a C sharp. That's just what I like to keep it tuned at. So there are some notes that you can achieve on this instrument. As long as it's with a half step of the note that's already there, you can usually go up or down a little bit in order to achieve the note that you need to get. On the DulciForte, we've got a little bit wider range, still starts at an A1, goes all the way up here to an A6. So instead of an E6, we have a little bit more range. That gives it a total of a 5-octave range, 6 different A's, 5 octaves. The chromatic range of this instrument on a standard tuned DulciForte is going to start at an F sharp above your D on the extended range bass bridge. So D, E, F sharp, that begins a complete chromatic range all the way up through that A6. Now, specifically at the top of my D650, the tuning schematic is not uncommon on a lot of hammer dulcimers. This is how it's tuned. So you've got the key of C. If you wanted to extend past this F, it no longer becomes, it's no longer that standard tuning that we're used to across the entire rest of the instrument. The reason for that is to achieve some chromatic notes. So we can wind up getting this chromatic all the way through there, which is really useful. That way you have all the notes and you don't have repeated notes. The problem with it is that it limits you in the key of F to only 1 octave. You've got just this octave in the valley of your instrument of F. And then playing in the key of B flat is particularly tricky. On the DulciForte, you have the entire key of F in a normal standard tuned box. And then you also have a B flat standard tune box. Oops. You've got that box. So you've got 2 full octaves of F, which is going to allow you to play a lot easier in the key of F. You've got a little box of B there, and you can also work your way down the scale in B. And we've got a new B that's located on the extended range bass bridge. Now, if you're wondering how you wind up getting those chromatic notes that are now diatonic, they've relocated those types of notes to be over here. So they're outside of the standard tuning, so why not just put them somewhere completely different anyways, since you've got to kind of memorize where they're located regardless of how your instrument's tuned, since they're not part of the standard tuning schematic of a hammered dulcimer. I want to want to talk about having the extended range bass or the super bass on the left versus the right. As you can see on one instrument, on the new instrument, I have it on the right, and on my other instrument, I had it on the left. Now at the time, that's what was available. Dusty Strings now makes a D670, which has that extended range super bass bridge is located on both sides simultaneously. It does weigh a bit more. And then the Masterworks DulciForte has this bridge available either on the right or on the left. Now, for me, I've always kind of wanted it to be on the right. It just wasn't available when I purchased my Dusty Strings. And the reason why I like to have it on my right is, let me just try and illustrate this with one hand. If I'm playing and I'm using, playing some melody notes up here with my left hand, and I'm playing some chording notes down here with my right hand, if I want to incorporate that super bass bridge and get one of those low notes, I need to reach for it with my left hand. I'm not going to do that with my right hand. Well, if I'm reaching for one of these notes with my left hand, then my right hand needs to come up here to play the melody or cover that part of the tune. And then when my left hand comes back up here, then my right hand comes over here, and it's just this constant moving around in a weird way and reversing my leading hand, which is kind of hard on my brain. So I always really wanted to have that super bass located over here because I can leave my leading hand however it winds up being, even if I'm leading with my right hand. If I'm reaching for one of these notes and I want it to be lower, I just reach a little bit farther. So there's a G, there's an octave lower. I can just reach a little farther with my right hand, and I don't have to do these mental gymnastics in order to achieve those super low notes. So if you're not familiar with having an extended range instrument, adding it to the right side, that bass bridge, adding it to the right is going to make it so that you don't have to kind of relearn how to play all the tunes that you already know in order to achieve some of those lower notes. There is, however, a pro to having the extended range on the left. It's just going to give you a little bit more projection. The sound of those real low notes, they project a little bit more on the left because of the fact that there's really nothing else going on over here. So the bracing, they can brace this bridge inside and it's not really close to anything else. When the instrument has the super bass or the extended range bass on the right hand side, there's bracing for this bridge already. Then they're adding a little bit more over here. And so it's just going to take the volume down. That sort of big boomy sound is just going to come down just a little bit. Now for me, I haven't noticed it to be so different that it bothers me. I like it just fine. In fact, it's nice in a lot of ways because it doesn't overpower the rest of the instrument. It kind of makes that instrument sound like it's the same instrument from top to bottom. Also, this instrument has these dual response bridges on it, which have kind of helped to control the sustain across this instrument because it is so big. The string spacing on both of these instruments is really, really, really close to being the same. It's pretty wide, which I prefer a wider string spacing for a number of reasons. I feel like it can really add to your accuracy. You're less likely to hit two notes at the same time on accident because you've got a little bit more surface area to aim for. And when you've got a big instrument, you're playing complicated stuff, it really does help to have a wider string spacing. Also, and this is just me, I prefer the Dusty Strings hammers, and you can see that they have a really wide surface area. It doesn't matter what side I'm hitting with, it's got a pretty wide surface area. So a wider string spacing allows me to hit those notes without risking hitting two notes at a time. Now that nice wide string spacing combined with the fact that this instrument, because it's chromatic all the way up to that A6, it's got a note down here that's added onto the regular bass bridge. You can see that one stops at an A2. This one stops one note below the A2, so it goes down to a G sharp. And then it goes all the way up to that F instead of E. So you've got a note added to both the top and the bottom of the instrument. That's going to add a little bit more depth to the instrument. So this instrument is, or height, I don't know how you want to look at it, but this instrument is about 25 inches. That's just what I measured. It's about 25 inches from the top end rail to the bottom end rail, whereas my D650 is a little less than 23 inches from the top end rail to the bottom end rail. And what that means for me, obviously the instrument's larger, but I have short arms, so I have to make some adjustments. My dusty strings, I've always had to play it at a slight angle because of the whole short arms thing. I got to bring this top end rail a little closer to my hands, so I never have been able to play it accurately flat if I wanted to reach these high notes. On the DulciForte, you can see that I have it at a much steeper angle, and the reason for that is because the instrument's taller, which means that those notes are even farther away from me, so I need to bring that angle up in order to get those instruments closer to my hands so I can actually reach them. Now, despite being a physically larger body, this instrument, the DulciForte, actually weighs quite a bit less. And these numbers I'm about to give you are the numbers that I have weighed on my scale. On my instruments, wood can vary, the density can vary. So, it really just depends on your instrument and what kind of things that you have added on, whether you've got dampers or what type of wood you use for your end rails, you might get a different weight. I have subtracted from the weight of my dusty strings because I have a flat stander system on the bottom of it, and I asked them what that weighed, so I just subtracted a little less than a pound from the weight of my dusty strings. Now the DulciForte in the case with the damper pedal was 26.2 pounds. The dusty strings in the case with its damper pedal was 36.6 pounds. So about 10.4 pounds difference in the case with the damper pedal. Now just the instrument, the DulciForte, was 19.4 pounds, and the dusty strings was, 27.6 pounds. So when you're picking it up often on the stand or moving it from, the case to the stand, you're moving 27.6 pounds, and over here you're moving 19.4 pounds. That's a huge difference. The dusty strings alone, just the instrument, weighs more than my DulciForte did in its case. In conclusion, I have taken some sound samples. I've played essentially the same thing on both of these instruments just to give you an idea of the difference in sound. I think that they both sound good. I'm not necessarily saying one sounds a zillion times better than the other. You can judge for yourself. I like the sound of both of these instruments. I knew when I was looking at getting a new instrument, I had all these things in mind that I wanted, but I never worried about sound because I know that the Masterworks dulcimers always sound good. And I've always really liked the way that the Dusty Strings D600 and D650 sound as well. So I do want to be clear though that this is a brand new instrument, the DulciForte. It hasn't been broken in, so there's a little bit of a disadvantage there. Likewise, there's some disadvantages on the Dusty Strings because even though it's been broken in really well, it does need some new strings. Some of the notes are a little bit dead, and it could probably use new Delrin as well. So I feel like those disadvantages kind of equalize, and will give you a pretty good example of what the difference in sound is. And also keep in mind, I'm using an iPhone to record this sound. It's not ideal at all. I get that, but it's what I have on hand, and it's what was working. Here's F. Here's B flat. Probably go even further than that. Here's A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a total of 5 octaves and 6 different A's.